Hi there. In my last video I experimented a little bit with sound recording using the little Tascam recorder, but I found out that it's probably very good if you're holding it sort of like with the internal mics pointing at your mouth at fairly close quarters, but in this environment I don't think it works very well. So in this video I'm experimenting a little bit more and using this little lapel mic. And I've got that attached directly to the Tascam, so hopefully sound quality will improve in this video. Now in the last video I had a number of people commenting about long series drill bits, which I never knew existed, but certainly if I'd have had a long series drill bit 30/32 of an inch in diameter, it would have made my life a lot easier when drilling the bottom hole in the valve chest. Now, also Peter, aka PGS, he suggests that if you haven't got a long series drill bit, what you can do is to take a piece of bar, maybe 1/4 of an inch in diameter, drill a hole in the end of it to hold your drill bit that you want to extend, drill in by about, I don't know, 1/8 of an inch or something like that, and then hold it, hold the drill bit in with some grub screws, and by that, doing that method, you can extend that standard drill bit by, you know, a sort of small amount but a significant amount over the standard length. So at the beginning of this video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to revisit the drilling of that hole in the valve chest, but I'm going to take an approach similar to what Peter suggested, but rather than use grub screws, I'm going to use super glue to hold the drill bit in this bar. Also in this video I'm going to have a go at making the cylinder covers. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken this piece of 1/4 inch bar and turned it down a little bit on this end here. Now you might recall that that hole in the boss is 1/4 of an inch and it goes down to about there. And what I've done is I've drilled a hole in the end of the bar, 3/32 of an inch, and inserted this 3/32 of an inch drill bit into it and just used some super glue to glue it in. And I've worked out that I've obviously centered all this up. I'll put this in the chuck. So I've worked out I need to drill down by an extra 50 thou. That seemed to work okay. Well, the good news is I didn't drill through the end of the boss, and if I just insert the drill bit in there, just see the top just sticking out. Perfect. Okay, so these are the castings for the cylinder covers, and it confused me initially because these two parts are identical, but yet in the drawing it suggests that they're two different actual parts. There are different part numbers. Now I queried it with Stuart Models and they basically said, well, on one of them you take that off and on the other one you take that off, or words to that effect. So I can only imagine that in the past things have changed and they've obviously decided on using the same item for the top and bottom covers, so obviously they need to be machined differently. But first of all, I need to tidy them up on the bench grinder, and I might use the hand file as well. But I'll do all that off camera. Okay, so I've decided to tackle the top cylinder cover first. The idea will be to put it in a 4-jaw chuck with the chucking piece sticking out, and I'll clock it on this edge here. Then I'll machine all of the cylinder side, and I'll machine the chucking piece as well. Then I'll switch it round onto a 3-jaw chuck and hold it by the chucking piece, and then I'll machine this side. I'll probably bring that down to the correct thickness at that stage, and then the idea will be to put it on the mill and to drill the holes for the gland port face, and then I'll remove this chucking piece and drill the holes using the mill. So that's sort of the plan at the moment. Well, that was my plan. So I've centred it on that boss, but now I realise I can't get in to machine it, so I need to rethink that. Well, I must have been playing around with this for about an hour at least. I just can't get it spot on. I've tried putting some packing here. The packing just falls out when I try and get it level. So anyway, I'm sort of within sort of 10 thou ish, maybe 13, and also on this boss I'm within 10 thou, so I think I'm just going to have to call it a day there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to face off this end here, and I'm going to centre drill it so I can offer some support with the tailstock. So I'm literally just going to take a few thou off here. And now I'll just centre drill it. So the first thing I'm going to do is machine this chucking piece here. Looks okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try and face this end. I'll probably run only about 100 RPM, and I'm going to put this face mask on, because if this thing flies off I need a little bit of protection. Looking good so far. So this boss here, this fits inside the cylinder, and it's currently sticking out by 150 thou, so it needs to be machined down to a 1/16 of an inch, which is 0.0625. So around about 87 thou needs to come off this. So now I need to reduce the diameter of this boss down to around about an inch, so it's a nice fit into the cylinder. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm just going to use the compound slide, because I've set the compound slide at that point where it's up against this face at 0, and I'll just increment the cross slide by 5 thou at a time. There's quite a bit to come off. I think there's probably about 100 thou in total, but I'll do all that off camera. Well, that seems to be a very good fit. I've just put a gauge on here to make sure that this chucking piece is still centred, and it is. So what I'll do now is I'll take it off the 4-jaw chuck, put a 3-jaw chuck on the lathe, and then I'll chuck it in the 3-jaw chuck on this chucking piece, and then we can machine the other side. Okay, so the distance between the rear boss and the gland port face should be ½ inch, and this is 42 thou over. So I need to take 42 thou off the front of that first of all. Now the thickness of the cover isn't defined anywhere, so all I'm going to do is do a facing cut just to tidy it up. Okay, so now it's time to drill through with a 3/16 of an inch drill bit. But what I've done first of all is I've centre drilled, and now I'm going to drill with a 9/64 drill bit, and then I'll open it up to 3/16. So finally, I need to drill to a depth of 5/16 of an inch with a 5/16 of an inch drill bit. But first of all, I'll open it up with this smaller one, and then I'll use the 5/16 of an inch drill bit. But I'll do all that off camera. Once that's done, we can do the rest of the work on the mini mill. Okay, so what I've decided to do first of all is to tidy up these edges to get them nice and parallel and at right angles. Now I reckon they're about 40 thou over size on each end, but all I'm going to do at this stage is to take about 10 thou off. Probably needs a bit more off there, to be honest. Take another 5 off. Okay, so what I'll do now to maintain parallelism is I'll just loosen the vise. I'll just move this across here. And now I'll machine this side in the same way, probably taking 10 to 15 thou off. Once I've done that, I'll then switch it round 90 degrees and repeat the same process. But I'll do all that off camera. Okay, so the sides are really nice and parallel and straight and at right angles. So what I've done now is I've measured the distance between the top of that boss and the bottom of it, and it comes in at 12.2 millimeters. So 12.2 divided by 2 is 6.1. So I set the height gauge up here to 0, then I moved it down 6.1 millimeters and scribed the line. Then I took it out of here, switched it round, set the height gauge to 0 again, then set it to 6.1 millimeters and scribed a line, and the two lines coincide. So that's given me the sort of centre point there. So having done that, I can now have a go at marking out my other hole positions. But I'll do all that off camera. Okay, so I've used the surface plate and the height gauge to do some marking out, but it was really difficult getting a centre point here to work from. And I reckon after doing the marking out, I think I'm about 20 thou out here compared with this side. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to centre the mill on this point, and I'm going to reset the DRO, and I'm going to do more accurate marking out using the DRO, and hopefully that will confirm that some of my manually marking out is not quite accurate. Okay, so I've used the DRO and the centre drill to go round and just make little marks where the holes need to be drilled, and I'm very happy with it, and it has confirmed that I am slightly out with this line here. I've also used the circle function to define the hole positions round here. That looks good. So what I'll proceed to do now is to drill these 4 holes to be 5 BA clear, drill the circular holes to be 7 BA clear, and drill and tap these 2 holes to be 7 BA. But I'll do all that off camera. Well, can you believe it? I've messed up. When I originally marked this out, the distance between these 2 holes here is 1 3/8 of an inch. And when I marked these out, I didn't realise that they're actually 1 3/4 of an inch, and I marked them out to be 1 3/8. So the first hole I drilled was wrong. I mean, fortunately, I didn't drill all 4 of them, otherwise it'd have been a right old mess. But anyway, I think I can probably fill that or do something with it, and it shouldn't affect it structurally. Okay, so I've put the cylinder in the vise, all nice and perpendicular. I've left the chucking piece on the cover, because I think I'll need that once I fill this hole in. I'll probably clean this face up again. And I've centred it on the mill, and I've used the circle function on the DRO, and I'm centered on all of these holes now. I've got the coordinates spot on. So what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to drill through each of these with the 2.1mm drill bit, and then I'm going to go round and tap them to 7BA, and I'm going to drill to a depth of 6mm. So I'll drill the other 5 holes off camera. Well, that seems to have worked out okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to fill that hole in using JB Weld, which I've never used before. Once it's cured, I think it takes 24 hours, I'll put this cover back on the lathe in the 3-jaw chuck using the chucking piece, and I'll just clean this face up. Then I'll mill off the chucking piece, and that'll be the top cover completed. Now the bottom cover is a very similar process. In fact, it's simpler because this boss here, this just needs to be removed, but the rest of it is pretty much the same process as the top cover. So I'll do all that off camera, and once I've completed it, I'll get back to you. Okay, so I've just been machining the bottom cover, and I thought I'd show you this bit of a problem I've got. I've been really struggling getting a decent finish when cutting this cast iron. I think one of the problems might have been I didn't have the carriage lock or the carriage lock down, but I've been using a high-speed steel cutter. Now I thought I'd take a different approach for the other side, and I decided to use one of these inserts specifically for aluminium, and I got these from Banggood. Not that I'm promoting Banggood whatsoever, but these are a CCGT 060204, and they were about £8 for 10. I'm sure you can get them from other places. And when I made the cut, I cut about 3 thou off. I had the power feed on for the cross slide, and I made sure the carriage was locked down. And the finish I got was that. I'm ever so happy with it. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is going to mark it all up so I can drill the holes, and then I'll take this, machine that off, and I think it needs a little bit of a recess there, and then it'll be completed. So I'll get back to you when all that's been done. Okay, so I've drilled holes in the bottom cylinder cover, and that seems to have gone okay. So what I've done now is I've just attached it to the base and placed the cylinder on top. And I just want to make sure that when I drill through and tap to 7BA into the cylinder, I want to make sure that everything's nice and perpendicular and straight with the base. So what I'll do is I'll just use some double-sided sticky tape and tape it together, and then I'll remove both the cover and the cylinder, put it into the mill, and then I'll drill through and tap to 7BA. But I'll do all that off camera. Okay, so I just thought I'd show you this. These little screws here are quite tiny. They're countersunk, and they'll hold the bottom cover onto the cylinder. And just as sort of a check or a test, I've drilled the first hole using the 2.1mm drill bit, and I've gone to a depth of 5mm, and then I've tapped it to 7BA, and it just seems to be perfect. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and do the rest, just drilling to a depth of 5mm and then tapping. Well, that seemed to take quite a while, but I'm really happy with the way it's turned out. It's a real shame that I drilled one of the holes in the wrong place, and I've used that JB Weld, but it is a bit of a darker colour. But I think once I get the A-frames on there, it won't really be obvious. I think, to be honest, the A-frames will probably cover most of it up. Also, I was a bit confused with this cutout in the bottom cover, and I can only think it's there for something like to give clearance up for a drain cock, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, I've put it at this side. If it proves not to be the case, I might have to you know, make another one somewhere, but I think that'll be okay. But anyway, I hope you like the results, and I hope to see you later.